Okay, so first, sorry that what I was saying while I was at the property isn't audible. I tried using the GoPro this time, and I'm not sure what was going on, but it was having some difficulty recording sound. So you can't really hear what I'm saying in it. So obviously, what I'm going to narrate is not going to match with how you see my lips moving. Um, but let's get into it. So today we're at the tower blind again. Got a couple different things I'm wanting to do. First, we're going to crawl up into the blind, take a look around, see how things are looking in it. We're going to talk about the looking branch again and kind of discuss a little bit of strategy that I'm going to be using for the area. So crawling up into it, I mean, you can see a few gaps that weren't there before, but that's fine. Those are easy to fix. As you can see, I've got branches in the way, and even looking, that looks like that tree that we had looked at yesterday and trimmed up, hoping that we wouldn't have to cut it. Looks like it's still kind of in the way, and we're going to have to cut it. Notice I don't have a door on it. My door actually got blew off in a storm that we had, so that's one thing that we'll have to fix before season. And we haven't added the railing for the steps. This stand kind of got thrown up in a hurry last year because of some bucks we had coming to this field. But it did its job. Ended up killing a nice buck out of it, and we saw quite a few deer while we were sitting in the stand, both bucks, does, and fawns. Base of this stand is about 6 foot. So that's going to put your eye level about 9 or 10 foot looking out. It seems to be a perfect height for this area. I mean, we've got it kind of tucked back off the food plot about 5 yards. And it's kind of tucked back in these trees, so it kind of blends in. Even though we're going to trim some limbs around it, it'll still kind of blend in. The deer don't really care about it. They don't really pay a lot of attention. I mean, they do look up. Last year when I shot the 12 point, he did look up at me. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take the lopper and we're going to cut some limbs that are just there that I can reach. There's some that still need to be cut that I'm going to have to come back with the pole saw and cut, and then those stobs off of the limbs that I cut today, I'd like to get the saw. They were a little too thick for me to cut with the lopper, but I'd like to come back with the saw and kind of trim that up, make it look a little bit nicer. All right, so we've got some of those limbs cut out. You can see there's still quite a few more limbs that I am going to have to trim out of there. But again, I'm not going to be able to do that till I come over with the pole saw. And to be quite honest, it was kind of hot today. I did have some mosquito repellent, but the mosquitoes were still bothering me today, just not as bad as they have been. We'll talk about the mosquito repellent here in a moment. So walking across the field, noticing that there's a little bit of clover that we planted in the fall last year still growing. Looks like it's got some good start going. Honestly, surprised it wasn't choked out by the weeds that were in here, because the weeds were pretty thick when I brush hogged, if you remember that video. So now we're on the trail that we were looking at. Here's the tree we trimmed up yesterday. I was hoping we could, save part of the tree. Doesn't look like we're going to be able to get the view that we're wanting. And reason for that is we had opportunities, a couple bucks back, at the 35, 40 yard mark right behind this tree, but because of the tree, we couldn't get a shot. So we're going to take it out. There's a couple others right along in this area that we're going to need to remove as well. And that'll help this overall area once we get this cleaned out. The bucks love using this. It comes off of a ridge, back down there a little ways. But kind of plan is I want to clean out a lot of these limbs that are low lying that the bucks could use as a licking branch. I mean, if you look at this big tree right there, I want to go up about 6 feet and trim them down so they can't use any of those as a licking branch right in here. I want them to go to where I want them to be, not where they want to be. And what I'm going to do also is I'm going to come back with the brush hog and kind of clean this area up a little bit better right in here. I mean, I kind of rushed it when I was in here before. And one thing I did notice right here where I'm standing now, the deer really like coming on the trail and cutting back to the right, where they stayed behind those couple of trees before they actually stepped out into the field. So we'll clean that up. That way they feel comfortable using that still. I mean, that's how it was last year. And it seemed like it was, some of the more mature bucks that kind of approached the stand that way. But we'll definitely get that cleaned up so they still have that tendency like they did last year. So let's talk about the kind of the strategy here for the licking branch and the scrape. So what I'm thinking, and I'm going to have to figure out my camera placement still, but I'm thinking I want to hang it in this, this tree that we looked at quite a bit yesterday. That's right over my right shoulder, right here. What I'm going to do is trim up the limbs around the base where they can't use those. That tree that I'm going to cut down over on the other side there, that's right now you're looking at, I'll cut a pole out of that, probably about 4, maybe 5 foot long, just basically long enough to strap it into that tree somehow with wire, rope, whatever I have to use, where it hangs out over the trail how I want. We'll get some grapevine where I'm wanting to put that, or where I best see in that tree to hang that pole. We're talking a grapevine, probably 5, maybe 6 foot long, to hang down where it's about my waist height. That'll be about perfect height for a deer's nose. They'll be able to do they'll smell it, they'll be able to lick it, and ultimately they'll be able to rub their head on it to leave their scent. So let's talk about that for a minute, because some people don't realize what they're actually doing there. So what the deer's doing there is they're leaving their scent so the next deer that comes along knows that they came through there. Think of a licking branch as the deer's phone book, where they can look everybody up just by smelling that, basically. It's not the best way to explain it, but it seems like it's the easiest, where most people have an understanding of what you're trying to say about that. So now that we've got the licking branch kind of discussed and kind of how we're going to set that up and why we're setting it up, here, and I guess more of the why is, the deer naturally come down this trail. We want them to come out. We want them to pay attention to that licking branch, not to the stand. After they check that licking branch, their natural action after that is going to be go into the field and get their high quality food before they go to the ag fields or whatever they're going to go and feed on in the overnight period. So that's kind of the idea with the licking branch. Sorry, my son interrupted me, and I can't get my thought process back together on that. But let's talk about something else that I've wanted to discuss here. That other consultants I've actually heard them say, steer away from this. I'm going to try it, and I'm going to give you my thought process on why I'm going to try this. So we're going to put several different food plots out. Obviously, this is going to be our biggest food plot. We're going to have one over in front of the box blind that my dad likes to hunt out of. We're going to have one over by the ridge stand that I like to hunt out of. And typically I hunt out of that one kind of late season. And then we're going to put a couple down in the lower area where my brother hunts, one by a ladder stand that me and him both kind of hunt out of. And then one over by a stand that he primarily hunts out of. But then I'm going to put another one kind of set back in the woods. It'll be almost in the middle of the property. And we haven't put one there in a long time. We used to put one there. The deer really seemed to like it. We stopped doing that. I'm going to do it again this year. It's not going to be big, maybe a quarter acre at the biggest. And that might even be kind of big for the spot. I haven't looked to see what kind of work I have to do on that. If I can just go in and brush hog or what I'll have to do. Reason for putting that there is that's going to be kind of like a sanctuary. We're not really going to hunt it. It's going to be, they can go there, they eat, they feel safe. They already travel that area quite a bit, so this is just going to be adding that extra food there. They actually bed fairly close right in that area, so they may actually lay in this food plot since we're not going to be putting pressure on it and browse. Now there's a lot of hunting pressure around where we hunt. Several of the properties within a mile of where we hunt get a lot of pressure, and a lot of it's in early bow season. So I'm hoping this kind of will benefit us because we always get deer that draw over from them. Sometimes I start seeing them show up on camera as early as 10th to the 15th of October. My brother shot a 23 point this last year. Never had him on camera, never seen him. He shows up one day during muzzleloading season, and my brother was lucky enough to take him. But these deer come from these other properties. Well, I know for a fact that these hunters don't really know as much about how to get into their stands without getting seen. I mean, I watched one of them walk into a stand and jump 5 or 6 deer, on his way into the stand, So it benefits us because the deer do feed into our place. We do put a lot of pressure on them, but because of the overall thickness in our property, because there's a lot of pockets we don't go into because of the thickness, because we know they're in there bedded. It plays in our favor, and the deer will pile in. There's tons of browse. I've never seen it mowed down. I mean, I'm probably not even at 50% carrying capacity for our property because of the amount of browse that we've got. But just adding this food plot will add that extra kind of honey hole for the deer to feel safe. They'll have that food. It'll really benefit them. Now, I know it's going to get browsed very quickly, and it's going to get mowed down. But what I'm hoping is going to happen once they mow that down, those deer are going to want to go off of that. They're going to want to go to these other food plots we're doing. The one here on, by the tower blind, the one on the ridge, the one that my dad likes to hunt, or even the ones down by my brother's, where he enjoys hunting. So the hope is that that's where those bucks and does are going to go into, and we've seen very similar patterns without a food plot there. So I just think adding a food plot is going to kind of increase that. One thing I heard one of the consultants say that I've been watching on YouTube was, why put a food plot if you're not going to put a stand on it? Well, in my situation, it makes sense. In everyone's situation, it might not. I mean, you might be hunting a piece of property where putting a food plot without a stand on it completely pulls all the deer off of your area, and you don't get a shot. I mean, that definitely could happen. So I want to lead this into kind of the next little topic I wanted to discuss briefly. And I mean, we're going very quick. These topics should be discussed in a lot more detail, with a lot more thought. But honestly, I just haven't had the time to dedicate videos to each one of these topics. We definitely will, because getting that information out, whether you know this, whether you don't go by it, you don't believe it, that's fine. I mean, we've seen success. I've been hunting since I was 8. I'm 35 now. I've learned a lot. With the deer farm the last 5 years, I've really learned a lot about deer behavior, because I'm with them 24/7, or 365 every day. We watch them on the cameras on the house. We see what they're doing at night. We know what they're doing during the day when we look out there. Are they moving this time of day? Are they not? And if you kind of keep track in your mind of time periods, weather patterns of when they're moving, when they're not, and then look at your trail cam pictures, that almost coincides, even though they are in a pen, they're still technically wild animals. I mean, my whitetail that are in the pens are not domesticated. Yeah, I can pet them, but they're not domesticated. But let's talk about deer patterns. So in my area, around September 21st to about October 10th, the bucks are coming off the ag fields. They're coming over into my food plots. I can pattern them. And what I mean by pattern them is I can tell you this buck is going to come in this field at about this time. And usually I'm right within about a 5-minute time period. So let's take this last year, for example. Had it patterned out very well, where the 12 point with the drop was coming in about 30 minutes prior to sundown, and then the 14 pointer was coming in right at the last minute or two of daylight shooting, right? I killed him on October 2nd. I said I was going to kill him 30 minutes prior to legal shooting hours being over. I killed him at like 29 minutes. Just because I didn't take into account that, the days do decrease from day to day in time period that time of year. I hadn't taken that into account, but killed him at 29 minutes from sundown. So I was pretty close on when I said I was going to shoot him. That's not to say you can pattern deer everywhere. I mean, it works for my area because I know them. I've hunted them here for years. I understand their movements. I can tell you where almost every trail's at. And just watching them on game cams, that time of year you can pattern them. Their testosterone is not built up. They're not in the pre-rut yet. They're still kind of in their bachelor groups. That early part of season, early bow season, is a perfect time in Oklahoma to go hit your food plots. Get in there when you know they're going to be there. Like I said, my bucks were coming in about 30 minutes prior to legal shooting hours being over. Worked perfectly for me last year. Then after that, their testosterone starts building up even more. They start getting into kind of that pre-rut, and then you have to take into consideration if a cold front comes in or not. So what I want to shift to real quick is something I've never seen on any other consultant. I've never seen another consultant talk about this. That's not to say they haven't, and I just haven't seen it. That's possible. I'm not going to say I'm the first. So if you were watching the video just a moment ago, I showed you a big bare spot. That's a hog waller. we do have hogs on our property. They came in a few years ago. We've been trapping them, killing them. I mean, we've killed about 40 in the last 2 years off this property. I don't have the trap set right now. I've got it built and I can catch them in it. I've got to do a little bit of repairs. The last time we caught some was 4 big boars and they lifted up the panels and got out. And I haven't seen them since on game cams or nothing. So I think they split and got out of the country because they got caught in that trap. But I don't ever see anyone talk about, you know, how you plan food plots around hogs, how you bait around hogs. I've not seen that on any of the guys that I've been watching. That's not, like I said, it's not to say it's not there, but I just want you to know that anything I plan, anything we talk about, I may not mention that it is about, or I have planned it around, you know, being around hogs and taking them into consideration, but I have. So just I want to set that kind of so everyone knows that. So and that's what I'm talking about right here, but right here, I paused because I actually heard a hog back in the brush grunting and snorting, and it sounded like a deeper hog. I stayed and talked for a few more minutes, and then I just got too nervous because I didn't have any kind of weapon with me today. I mean, I had the loppers and wasn't expecting to run into any kind of problems, but decided that probably best if I got out of here and just called it quits for the day. So you'll see me walk off here in a moment, and that's why, is because I didn't want to deal with a hog coming out at me, mad hog. I was trying to wrap up here. What I'm showing is a weed that the deer like. It's basically a wild alfalfa, and talking about the browse that's available. Whole time in my mind thinking about that pig I just heard. I also want to talk about the little device you've seen me holding. If you don't know what it is, that's a Thermacell. Mosquitoes have been really bad. We've had a lot of rain lately. It does work. I started using one last year. My brother got me that one for Christmas 2 years ago. I used it last year and swear by it. I'm not, and just to put this out there, I have no sponsors. So, I'm telling you that it works because I know it works. I use it, and I don't go hunting early season without it now. So I hope you enjoyed the video. We'll try to go into more detail on a lot of these things later.